Are you listening? Damn.
And welcome back once again to the Endurance Hour Podcast, episode 356. Alongside Coach Wendy Mader, I'm Dave Erickson. We begin today from Sean. I am going to take time off training after I complete Chattanooga 70.3 to allow my foot to heal and then focus on cycling and pick swimming up in the fall. If I take 4 to 6 months off of swimming, will I totally lose all my gains in the pool, Wendy?
Hey, Sean, this was actually a great question. And just a little bit of background on Sean. He sent me a swim video for analysis back in October of 2021. He could barely swim 2 lengths down and back without gasping for air. He had really poor body position, balance, breathing. I mean, he was really a beginner. And then he sent me another swim video for analysis that we posted on the Endurance Hour YouTube channel. And he also has been following our 70.3 program on Training Peaks. So he's actually kept me up to date on how he's doing. He did hurt his foot about a month or so ago, possibly a stress fracture. And then I had the pleasure of meeting with him. He drove up from Tennessee to meet me in the pool. So I got to do another, in-person video analysis with him. And it was just amazing how much progress he's made with his swimming on pretty much on his own with a couple analyses from myself, but just kind of following the program. And he's always given me kudos, thanks to your program. So a lot of positive feedback on what he's doing. So he did ask me the question, swimming does take up a lot of time, especially if you have to drive a distance to the pool. It's one of those things that if, you have to drop a sport in the multi-sport community, I think a lot of multi-sport athletes do take some time off swimming. So again, a great question. First, I wanted to give some background because I've seen his progress that he's made, a lot of it on his own. So I don't think he's going to have an issue with regaining his technique again. I think, when you do take time off out of the water, I took time out of 3 months out of the water for the first time in my life because all our pools were closed in 2020. I didn't lose feel, but you tend to lose a little bit of feel in the water, especially if you're a beginner. But his technique was so good that I think he won't have a problem regaining his feel for the water. And I think he'll go back to the technique that he is leaving with. He's not going to go back to the technique he started with in October of 2021. From a fitness and conditioning standpoint, you're going to lose your conditioning. I felt I lost a lot of conditioning when I took 3 months off. And I wrote a blog about how now my warm up is now my main set, meaning, when I got back in the pool, I did my normal kind of general warm up routine and I was kind of gassed. I kind of said, okay, that was good for the first day back after having 3 months off. So it's definitely, you're going to lose some conditioning in the water, but nothing that you can't get back when you regain some consistency, frequency, and kind of, reviewing the drills. Consider, send me another swim video for analysis if you're feeling that things are off when you get back in the water. And in general, when people take time off, athletes, usually there's a reason that they're taking time off. So the gains you make for the reasons you're taking the time off outweigh the fitness and the conditioning that you may lose from taking time off. It's rare that an athlete's going to take time off for no good reason. It's usually, they have just other commitments, or they're injured, or they're sick, or they just have other priorities in life. And so I think it's actually really healthy that you're going to take some time off and do something else for a while and build up your bike fitness.
I always feel like it takes me maybe a week and a half, just for me too, getting back in the pool 3 or 4 times, and then I'm back to where I can start pushing it again. And I've heard in the past, and this may be an elite swimmer philosophy, for every day you're out, it takes 2 days to get back in to where you were. Does that sound familiar from your swimming days?
Yeah, I've heard that before.
Yeah.
Do I remember, again, I've never really taken time off except for that 3 months in 2020. So, I really pretty much regularly have been a swimmer my whole life. Some periods of my life I've obviously swam more than others. Like I was a collegiate swimmer. So, middle school, high school, college was pretty intense. But after college, even when I started triathlon, I probably kept up the intensity for about a year, and then I realized I didn't need to swim that much. And so I backed off. But having done triathlons for 30 years, there really was no time off for any length to know if that holds true. But I think it's a good rule of thumb to follow because swimming is such a feel and you only really use your swimming breathing pattern in the water. You only use your swimming specific muscles in the water. So it's different than running and cycling because at least with running and cycling, you're standing and walking on your legs every day.
Right.
And so you're at least getting some muscle stimulation from walking where you can carry that over into the bike and the run where you can't so much in swimming.
I remember when I got back into it over the break, winter time, and started getting back a little more serious, that I'd start to cramp up or I could feel it in my lats initially. And I know I was probably just going out too hard, but it's because those muscles weren't used to it. Or if I was using paddles, like I'm doing too much strength training too early before I get the feel for it again. And then if any advice I would say is like, I don't think you're going to, it's not going to be a total loss. It's just going to take a time to relax and gradually get back into it. And I'm wondering from you, Coach, is it like a 10, maybe 15 second loss per 100 or 20 seconds per loss 100 if you haven't been in for months? I mean, what's the real loss in time? Because the technique will come back pretty soon and maybe a week or two into it. What are you really losing in the big picture of a few minutes over the course of the distance of the race you're preparing for?
Well, that's a really good question. Based on my experience, when I went back to swimming and I tried to, swim at a certain rate of perceived effort, I was about 10 seconds per 100 slower at the same rate of perceived effort before the time off. So for example, before I took time off, for example, let's just say I could hold 130 for 1,000, no problem, RPE of 5. And then after the 3 months off, I could hold 140 per 100 for 1,000 at an RPE of 5. And so really, when you're thinking about time adding or time subtracting, you want to make sure, is the RPE the same? Are you going the same effort and your time's off, or are you going harder, or are you going slower? But you did make a good point is when you are coming back, refocus on technique, easy swimming, get that feel. You may feel breathless. You're going to feel breathless. Not you may feel breathless. Everyone's going to feel a little bit more breathless when they get back in the water after time off. That's just totally normal. You just take it slow and don't expect to do the same distance at the same pace as you were before. And there's no reason to. There's no reason to expect that. You just need to slow down and kind of enjoy being back in the water again.
This question from Patrick about the bike. I'm wondering about the gear to pack on my bike. Not nutrition, but like the tools and pumps and etc. I keep going back and forth, he says, between saving as much weight as possible and being prepared so I don't get a DNF. Any wisdom on this to share? Thank you in advance. And before we answer that, do you know how much your bike weighs when it's race ready, Wendy?
No.
I just had mine tuned up. That's why I know my answer pretty quickly. And it was just over 21 pounds. And that was without water bottles. And I think I had my tire, my tubes and the CO2 and also a tool in the little back area. Other than that, it was just like 21.06 to be exact. So when he's talking about weight, depends on what type of frame you have. I think you're probably looking in the low 20s most likely, unless you have a super awesome bike.
Yeah, I started riding outside again, and I'm riding my 15-year-old road bike. That is super, super light. I need to weigh it because every time I pick it up, I'm like, this is the lightest bike in the world. I don't think anyone has a lighter bike than I do. And this is my road bike, titanium frame. It's 15 years old. It's so light. I love it because it's so light. But anyways, when it comes to being prepared, I'm going to carry more, and the weight doesn't even factor into my mindset, meaning I tend to put on heavy, if I'm not renting race wheels and I'm just using my own, I tend to have a little bit heavier duty tires. I have tire liners, and I just don't want to flat. And I will carry, at least 2 tubes, a couple CO2 cartridges in case I blow one and I need extra. And again, when I'm doing this, I'm not even thinking about the extra weight. It's not even part of the equation for me. For me, all I'm thinking about is I want to have the gear I need in case I get a mechanical. One we used to do, Dave and I used to do Ask Coach Wendy videos. And about a week or so ago, I actually posted one of our Ask Coach Wendy videos in our T2 Endurance Facebook group. And we actually discussed this exact topic about what to carry on the bike. And some of the things we had mentioned was, maybe an extra water bottle holding all your tools, the CO2, the cartridges, the little pump, the whatever the gun you're gonna use, a couple tire levers, and anything else you think you might need for like a multi-tool.
Yeah.
Put it, either put it, if you're wearing a bike jersey, that's easy to store. Sometimes I'd put an extra tube down my sports bra or up the short legs of my shorts. You had mentioned putting it in a water bottle.
Yeah, I forgot about that. It's been a while since we did that, but
right.
Yeah, if you don't have something on your bike that is built in, or one of those bento boxes where you are storing things, I forgot about that. Water bottle is a good little tool, little trick to hold your stuff in. Mm-hmm. Just don't try to pick it up. One thing I was just thinking as you were talking about the weight of a bike, or you don't think about it, is if you're concerned about a couple of pounds of a couple water bottles, maybe some nutrition, just lose the weight, your body weight, and your balance.
Right.
If
and
you're
that's my thoughts exactly. If people are worried about an extra couple ounces of a piece of equipment that's going to come in handy, then lose a couple ounces of body fat that you may have, if that's a concern. If you have the couple ounces of body fat to lose.
Probably do.
Like I said, that's why I'm not so concerned about weight. But something I do, and I just had this discussion with someone, is when I race, I do only carry one water bottle because I rely on the aid stations, depending on the distance of the race. Let's just say like a 70.3 or Ironman where nutrition becomes more of a factor. They're usually like every 10 or so miles. And so I don't need to carry all these bottles because I could just carry one to start with, empty it, throw it, grab a new one. And again, I'm pretty conservative when I'm going through those transition zones. I slow down because I rely on grabbing a bottle, because if I don't grab a bottle, then I don't have anything. And so I'm going to make sure I slow down enough and make sure the volunteer is able to hand me the water bottle and no one's going to get hurt in the process.
Yeah, I'm concerned that Patrick he says here that he's going back and forth on saving as much as weight as possible so he doesn't DNF. It sounds like the DNF is a bigger concern for him in other areas. If your bike fitness is fine, I wouldn't worry about a couple pounds, even a maximum of 2 more pounds or 3 pounds on your bicycle. You could either lose the weight or just increase your fitness. I wouldn't worry about carrying too much weight on your bicycle as it is.
Right. And I think when he's talking about DNFing, in case he gets a mechanical, so
he's prepared not to get DNF. Yeah, just 2 tubes, 2 CO2s, double that, and that's what I think he should do.
Right. And just know, most races, you want to make sure you check with the race director, go to those pre-race meetings, find out, is there going to be a mechanic on the course? Usually races, the top branded Ironman races, the WTC races, do have mechanical support. They have a sponsor, the local bike shop. So there is going to be a support vehicle around the course. It may not get to you in time, in a timely manner, but I broke my chain in Ironman Coeur d'Alene 2008, and I can tell you I did not carry an extra chain on me, and I just had to wait for the mechanical vehicle. And thankfully, within 5 minutes, I saw the race official who stopped, and he asked me what was wrong, and then he called in the bike people. So wherever the bike people were on the course to help you, probably turned around and came directly to me. That was nice.
You got seen in 5 minutes.
Well, I got seen in 5 minutes, but it was another 25 minutes before I was on the road again. But it allowed me to finish. I was so grateful that they allowed me to finish. I gave them a big hug and I said, thank you, I'm going to finish this race.
Here's another lesson for Patrick and anyone else when it comes to having an extra tube. In Arizona, I had the same type of issue where I had a flat and I had tubes on my bike, but they were short stemmed, and I changed to race wheels, and I didn't even think about having to double check my tubes because I've always had tubes, but they were short stem tubes, And so, but my race wheels had dishes, or deep dish, and so it's like I couldn't reach the stem. And I sat there for 15 minutes or so, and it was super frustrating because I was having a great bike, and luckily someone came up, and I had to change that up. Maybe I changed a wheel out. I can't remember what it was, or whatever. I got help, but it took 15 minutes or so, and I was sitting on the side of the road going, I came all the way down here to Arizona, having a great day, and now I'm stuck. And then I made the mistake, and I've talked about this before, of going too hard to try to make up that 15 minutes. Still had a great bike, but I was way over power, way over heart rate, and I was just trying to make it up, and it was dumb because I was on adrenaline and emotion. But there you go. Think about if you're going to change out race wheels, do you have deep dish? You need longer stems on your tubes.
Yeah, and that's a great point. Just talking about mechanicals, my first flat tire happened in an Ironman. It was called the 5430 Sports. It was an iron distance race in Boulder, Colorado, 2002. And I got a flat tire. I was leading the race. I got a flat tire at mile 70. I had used wheels that I never used before. I had borrowed deep dish rim wheels like you did.
Yeah.
I had the CO2. I had the tools I needed. I had just never changed them before. So it took me a long time to get that tire off the rim because it was a deep dish rim and I never changed them before. So again, point well taken. Make sure if you haven't never changed a flat before, make sure you change a flat on the wheels that you intend to race with. And so you know how to change a flat on your racing wheels if that's what you're going to use. And then again, in Coeur d'Alene, speaking of, you lost 15 minutes and you tried to make up for it. I didn't, because I have the experience to know I was way ahead of schedule. I was having a great bike. I knew I had 25 minutes to think about the calculations on what I was doing. So I knew I was still in reasonable placing, that I didn't need to go bust out the second half of the bike. I knew I could just get back on my pace, get back on my nutrition plan, hold back, and then just try to not lose any more time. And then just really it came in handy because I didn't blow up on the bike. I had a really good marathon. So there's a lot of strategy. There could be some strategy involved.
Mm-hmm. On a related note, this from Josh: my first full distance is in June, so right around the corner. What is your top tip for a first timer at the distance?
One tip, there's a lot.
Yeah.
But I think more than anything, race it like you trained it, meaning you're going to go into this thing and have a plan, a pacing plan, a nutrition plan, a mental strategy plan based on how you just trained for the last 4, 6, 9, 12 months, however long it took you to prepare for your first one. Just go out there, pretend it's another day of training, and don't go out of your zones. If you have a certain RPE, heart rate, power zone that you've trained in, that you plan to use, just stay within that and have your own race and don't focus on anyone else.
Yeah, I think that the pacing is pretty important, and not lowering your expectations, but go into it with the finishing mind of, I'm going to finish the race today, and don't train above what you said, what your training capacity has been or your speeds have been. Maybe add 15% to whatever your previous pace is as a solo event. If you're swimming an hour and a half for your swim, maybe add 10 minutes to it. Because you never know what this swim's going to be like.
Yeah,
same with the bike.
That's good. That's good advice.
Same with the bike. Add some more time to it, and then the run is going to be even more time to it because it's the end of the race and you've never done a full swim, bike, and run back to back yet because it's your first time. So you got 17 hours. Pace it, enjoy it, and then soak it in, and maybe make these little mental marks in your head of like, hey, what happened there? And just keep a running log. That way you can take notes later, so you can build on that experience for the next one. And experience is your best ally in these races. As you were just saying about your Coeur d'Alene race. All right, I've done this before. Okay, patience. Where I was, the reason why I was so frantic in the Arizona thing is I was hoping for a PR. I ended up getting a PR. But I let the moment, and I even knew what I was going through at the moment. Like, stop, but I couldn't stop. I was so, and I was a little bit fresh because I had 15 minutes to, relax.
Right.
And I was halfway through, and I still ended up having a great bike that day. But you still battle with yourself, even with experience. And that was, that was Ironman number 4, I think, maybe for me. So Anyways, that's my top tip is the pacing for the first full distance.
Yeah.
This from Kathy. Curious, what mistakes have you made or know from other athletes have made the week before their main event? And maybe this is Olympic and higher.
Oh, yeah. And this is a great question. So I'm going to go by my own experience back in the day when I started in the 90s. There wasn't really many books out there. My first real training book I ever read was 1997. It was Joe Friel's Training Bible. But I had been doing triathlons already for 5 years. And I had a swimming background. So swimmers, we used to train hard every single day. And so my biggest mistake early on was I didn't know how to taper. I didn't really even know what that was. Like, I didn't know phases of training or periodization or rest and recovery. I just loved to train. And so I would train hard up until race day. And I took the day off before because I was probably a travel day. Maybe I took a little bit more rest the week before. I have no idea because there were no training logs. There was no Garmin's. There was no way to track what you were doing back then. And I would go into races really tired. I do remember that part. I do remember one specifically, the Lubbock, Texas. This used to be called Buffalo Springs Half Ironman. It wasn't a 70.3 yet, but it was in Lubbock, Texas. And I trained so well, and I was wanting to qualify for Kona that year, and I was exhausted. And it was actually, that race was a learning experience for me to say, why are you so tired? What could you have done differently to not be so tired leading up to this race? And so that's when I started really wanting to figure out this sport and how to train properly. So I think a lot of athletes go into race week amped up. They could have a taper plan, but they don't want to follow it, and they might either do too much of their sport the week before due to lack of experience or just anxiety and they just want to train more, or because they're tapering off their training, reducing the volume, they go and do other sports. They'll go and play tennis for 3 hours with their friends, or go play football or soccer or basketball, and they start to use all this energy that they're supposed to save up, and they expend it doing something they don't normally do because they have more time and more energy. So I think that's the biggest mistake is not allowing the body to rest and recover.
I think the mistakes I've made, and I don't think I've had maybe a couple of really good taper weeks, is that I won't do anything. Like, I've almost stopped maybe on this Saturday or Sunday, and then Monday through Friday is like, I feel maybe it's like I'm tired of all the training leading up to it. It's like, because in the plans, like a lot of the training plans that we put together on Training Peaks, it says, okay, go out and do a 30-minute easy ride followed by a 10-minute run. I would skip those, just like I'm good, and then I'd skip the next one. I'm good. I don't want to go and do a 30-minute swim because it takes longer to travel there and prep there and get back and clean up than it does the actual swim. It's like I'm good. And I think that would be my mistakes in the past, is like I've kind of thrown in the towel the week of. It's like I don't do anything, and then I'm not as loose on race days because you kind of just, all right, I'm still keeping the engine going, but I just haven't done anything. And then race day is like it's a little rusty. I just don't feel the fitness is there, but I feel like I need a little bit more into it. I need to break a sweat the day before. Another mistake that's coming up right now. I remember going to Boise 70.3 and thinking, the 2 days before you travel day, and then I'm with my friends, and let's go out and do a little a tempo run, or let's do a couple hard efforts with a mile run or something like that. It's like I feel like those are the efforts I'm trying too hard at. It's like it's not going to make a difference. I'm trying to make up for last time. Like now I'm trying to do a training plan. You're not going to get it in the last couple days into a race. Right. I remember thinking, we're doing it right. Okay, cool. I'm training with other people. This is how you do it. Didn't make a difference.
Yeah.
It's so stupid.
That's a good one though. That was a good one. Thanks for sharing that one.
This is something that and I'm pretty sure that's why it's in our question today from Katie. Anyone in the group here has done Ironman Florida and Ironman Cozumel. How do they compare? I haven't been to Cozumel, but I have been to Ironman Florida to cover the race as a reporter, but I never done the race. You've done both.
I've done both. So I did Ironman Cozumel in 2017, and I did it with a friend, and I was trying to qualify. No, I'm sorry, I did it in 2016 because I wanted to qualify for Kona, which would have been in 2017. And I was expecting this current to push me in the swim. I was expecting wind and I was expecting heat because that's what I heard about. And it was a flat course and just, it was a really beautiful course. So what happened to me was I was only like a minute or two faster in my swim than I normally would be. I was expecting 10 or 15 minutes. I either got stuck in a riptide or they didn't have a nice tail current that year. I did experience lots of wind on the North Shore. It's 3 loops and each loop felt more windy than the previous loop, which I was expecting that because that was what I was told. And I was expecting a lot of heat. And I thought the temperatures were fairly mild that year. Like the humidity seemed lower and the heat seemed a little bit lower than I heard it was going to be. Again, this was in 2016. And then I went to Florida in 2021 and I was expecting a little bit of wind. I was expecting a little bit slower swim than usual because it was just in the Gulf and I don't really swim in the ocean that often. And I was expecting a little bit warmer temperatures. But overall, I was expecting a mild day. And what I got was cold weather, huge riptides, and lots of wind, different than what I've heard from previous years. And so, I think the only comparison is that they're both known to be flat courses. They're both on the coast. So you're going to experience, a saltwater swim. And you're going to experience wind. But, ask anyone else, depending on the year they've done these races, and you're going to get different stories about what the conditions actually happened on race day. So, again, if you want to compare courses, I'd say they're similar in the fact that they're flat, they're on the coast, and there's going to be wind and heat, but that's about it.
I can't think of anything right now, and maybe there is, but how the same course compares year after year after year.
Right.
I mean, you'd be lucky to have the same conditions repeated. I mean, because it's in my backyard, Ironman Coeur d'Alene, I can't remember the last time it was 2 good years in a row. It could be extremes from one year to the next, whether it's hot or cold or wind. I mean, pick anything.
Yeah. And this makes me think of, I was going through our YouTube channel on Endurance Hour, and I pulled out a video that you posted like 6 years ago about the top 5, quote unquote, easy Ironmans.
For beginners, right?
For beginners.
Yep.
And I look at that list and I'm like, gosh, not anymore. Because, again, I still go with Arizona as a good first timer event because it's 3 loops, it's flat, it's an easy swim. There's no current. It's a safe swim. And I think that's the main thing for beginners, a safe swim. And at the same time, Arizona can have cold or heat. It can have extreme wind, which a beginner doesn't want extreme wind. And again, there's by definition of being an Ironman, it's not easy.
Yeah.
Being a beginner, you could be a beginner, but you could be a strong swimmer. You could be a beginner and a strong cyclist. You could be a beginner and a strong run. So always pick a course that's going to be tailored towards your strengths.
I think I saw that list somewhere, or I saw a top 10 list, and I broke it down to my 5 favorite when I made that video. And I thought sense about who would say this, and then the fact that it would be said is, oh, you're doing an easy Ironman. That's one of the easier ones. And I don't know what's easy about the swim, bike, and run distances of an Ironman. There's nothing easy about it. It's not like you just wake up and I feel like I'm going to do it this weekend. There's nothing. Whoever says that, arrogant, rude, whatever, ignorant. There's nothing easy. You got to do the distance. You got to do the work.
Right. And I think when I hear a beginner, what is the best Ironman for a beginner? Yeah. I think of the word easy. For a beginner wants to have an easier course. And I think always for a beginner, I'm always looking at the swims. What would be one of the, again, easier swims for a beginner to go through, because most triathletes are weaker in the swim.
I think about bike course when I think about Ironmans on, which is hard. How much climbing is involved.
That makes it hard. Yeah.
Yeah, because it takes so much out of somebody for the run. I mean, if you're doing so much more climbing and then your nutritions and your muscles and you're cramping, or it's like, oh, now you're out there longer than you thought, an extra hour. Like kind of like again, I got the 70.3 Coeur d'Alene coming up. It's just one loop out and back, but for the Ironman, it's two when they've had it. And I know how hard some of that climbing is, and mentally I was like, okay, this is going to be a 12-minute climb. This is nonstop, and there's going to be a few more of those. But the people who don't know how to pace them, they're going to tax their legs, or they're going to go too hard, and they're not going to know how to, strategically approach some of these courses. And like Placid, how many times have you done that one?
Twice.
And that one is not an easy day at all. I mean, gorgeous, but it's, and in Wisconsin.
I think that's I would categorize that as a hard Ironman.
Yeah. Oh, especially the run, right? I mean, running there's nothing flat about that.
So hilly. It's so hilly. Well, I look at Texas. I would categorize Texas as a good beginner course, again, because the swim, there's no turbulence in the swim.
Yep.
It's a flat run and flat ride. Yet this year, due to the wind, athletes were saying it was one of the toughest Ironmans they've ever done because of the extreme wind weather conditions. So, there's quote unquote beginner friendly, easier quote unquote Ironmans, but at the same time, you're going to get heat, you're going to get wind, you're going to get hills somewhere.
Jennifer writes, I've been doing sprint distances for 2 years, and I'm considering doing my first half next year. Please provide some guidance and share some differences in training volume and any other tips you have going from the sprint distance to a half iron distance.
Well, congratulations, Jennifer. I think, starting with some sprints and not, starting with the half as your first race is a good thing that you've been doing. Just getting experience, maybe this year as you're prepping for the half, you can do an Olympic distance or two to kind of get that middle distance going. I think when it comes to training volume, based on sprint, Olympic, half and full, it's what you do on your weekends, whether your weekend is a Saturday, Sunday, or a Monday, Tuesday. Whatever your days off are is when you tend to do your longer volume of training. And I think that's the main difference between training plans is what distance you're training. An Ironman, you could be putting up to, 6 to 10 hours on the weekend, whereas a half Ironman, you're putting in, maybe 5 to 8 hours on the weekend. And an Olympic distance, you're putting in maybe 3 to 6 hours, depending on, who you are and what your experience is. And so, the Monday through Friday stuff doesn't really change all that much. I think anyone can do an Ironman in a 10 to 12 hour training volume week. Some people do more, some people do a little less, but I think it can be done in 10 to 12 hours. If you have more time and you need it, then take it. And then, just depending on your experience and your fitness, that'll determine the intensity level that you put in, Monday through Sunday, depending on the volume of training you're doing. But, I think if you're going to jump to that distance, Dave and I talked about it on the podcast last week, consider some coaching to help guide and educate you and motivate you when it gets tough, because it's definitely tougher to fit in those longer runs and longer rides. Especially if you have a lot of other commitments in your life going on.
This from Julie, and I think we'll wrap it up with Julie's question. I'm looking for a plan that gets me to a place where I continue to improve and I'm in better shape than I was last season. Always the goal to keep getting better. Which program of yours do you recommend?
So Julie had asked me this questions, and I had a few follow-up questions with her as far as, what does better mean? What does in better shape mean? Because that, that's such a term that means something different to everyone else. So subjective term that means something different to everyone. So, I recommended, based on her doing Ironman Florida last year, that she follow our 12-week advanced Ironman plan on Training Peaks. She, I know a little bit about her current training volume. She shared her Training Peaks with me, so I have a little idea of what her starting point is. And just having a couple Ironman experiences, I think she's ready for that 12-week advanced plan. And at the same time, we talked about all the things besides a training plan that'll put you in better fitness, get stronger and faster, which includes, making sure you're recovering, making sure you have whole food nutrition, and, limit stress in your life, because there's so many things that impact your ability to follow that training plan. There's more to your fitness. There's more to getting fitter and stronger and faster than just the training plan details. And so we talked a little bit about that as well.
I think the quick answer is whatever your level is, pick the next level up. So we have, the beginner distance races or beginner plans, then intermediate plans. Then we have the distances, and there's also the couch 2, pick your distance. And then there's the off-season plans, and there's specific plans. Like if you, where were you last off season? Well, let's add more to that to prepare your body to be stronger as a higher starting point into your next season. So if you need to work on your swim, get the How to Swim Faster in 30 Days program. If you want to work on your bike skills to be a better biker that season than you were the previous season, we've got individual cycling programs to work on the specific thing you're looking for, whether it's strength, cadence, power, and so on. I think that would be something that I would suggest to anyone. Look at the different ones and see how you can fill in the blanks to elevate your fitness going into the next season better than it was the previous season.
Right. And add to what you just said is you can get these, single sport plans that we have, like a single sport swim, single sport run, single sport bike, and you can incorporate these workouts into your general, multi-sport plan. So you can substitute some of the rides with specific, or swims or runs with the specific workouts that are going to meet and help you with your limiters, whether that be technique, strength, endurance, threshold, or speed.
Good questions today. If you have a question for the podcast, you can always go to our Facebook group, the T2 Endurance Club. You can always go on Instagram, and then also email Wendy at T2coaching.com, T2coaching at Wendy. No, that's not right, is it? Wendy at T2coaching?
Wendy at T2coaching.com and T2coachwendy@gmail.com. Yeah. I get them both. They're both good.
Okay. There you go. That'll wrap up episode 356 of the Endurance Hour podcast. Thank you so much for submitting questions. Hope we helped you, and hope you have a great week of training, racing, or recovery. We'll see you next time. Adios.
Adios.